Okay, it's time to look at some alternate picking. Everyone has their different sort of opinion on how you're supposed to properly pick when you're shredding or soloing and anything really in general. Um, One of the things that I've learned over the last, I don't know, like 20 years of playing is just really making sure I'm as efficient as I can with my picking. I really don't like to waste a whole lot of energy when I go to play fast. It should still be controlled, even though you're playing really quickly. There's a lot of stuff going on. It's still very important that you're doing it in an efficient manner. You're saving yourself some wear and tear, and basically just that sort of thing. So one of the things that I try to do is make sure that I got all of my fingers curled in against that thumb. Okay, I don't know if you can see that right there, but the thumb's pretty big. Okay, it's a opposable thumb. It's the one thing that separates us from cows, right? Anyways, the muscle on the thumb here, it's huge. Okay, it's got to work against all four fingers. It's how we hold on to things. It's how we grip things. So I've never been a big fan of just using like one finger against the thumb. When you go to put your pick up against one finger, what's going to happen is if you're playing with any level of intensity, that thumb is going to come down really hard on that first finger, okay? And it's going to make your finger kind of pivot at the joint like that, okay? Most fingers aren't made to do that, okay? They're supposed to go up and down, but they're not really supposed to pivot. There's no ball socket there. So when you're pushing down, obviously when your thumb's coming down on the finger like that, if you're playing with a lot of intensity and you're only using that one finger, you're going to really cause some wear and tear in here. You're going to feel it after a while. So what I've tried to do and try to get my students to do is to actually bring the fingers in against the thumb. Okay, what that'll do is that'll give more resistance against that powerful muscle of the thumb. Okay, so I can come down, pretty hard with my thumb if I'm playing with a lot of intensity, but I'm not going to cause some issues with my first finger because that strength of that thumb is coming against, it's being shared against all of my fingertips. And so that's going to help to alleviate some of the wear and tear on this poor little first finger. So that's one of the first things that I try to do is with my students is just to get them to bring all the fingers in against the thumb. Now you don't want to play like this, or every hand is going to be different, so there's going to be some slight adjustments. But the whole idea here is just to not hurt this poor finger. Okay. Now when I go to hold the pick, less is more. All right, I'm not really using a whole lot of pick. I don't have a lot sticking out. It's really hard to control when you're playing quickly. So if you choke in on the pick a little bit and you bring your fingers in, you're just as strong as anyone who's playing with a lot of pick and they're playing really loosely. So we're going to bring that pick in a bit, well, quite a bit actually, and we're just going to let it stick out the side. Optimize how much energy you're going to need to come across any one string. Okay, so we're holding that pick this way. We've got just a little bit sticking out. All right, and we've got the fingers against the thumb, helping to alleviate some of the stress that we're going to put down when we come down hard on that pick and on that first finger. All right. Now I've got a 7 string, so please just ignore this top guy. I'll get a 6 string sometime down the road when I get a little bit more money. We want to have a point of stability, sort of like a pivot point when we're alternate picking. It's very hard to have a reference point or to pivot from somewhere when your wrist is kind of up in the air. And now what a lot of people have done is they've actually taken fingers and made that their reference point, and they're kind of picking like that, or they'll curl a finger in, or they'll do something like that with their thumb. Now that works for a lot of people, but I'm just trying to demonstrate something that'll work in a more generic context. So what I've done is I've taken just the palm of my hand here, okay, somewhere around the bottom part of my hand, and I'm letting that be sort of my reference point or my pivot point. That's where I'm working from. All right, and so that's how I'm going to be alternating. I'm just going to place that pivot point right there, and I'm just alternating from there. Now if you see, all the movement starts on my pivot point, and I'm just moving in very small movements, and I don't have to do a lot of big movement because my pick isn't that big, but my pick is still strong because I've got all those fingers up against it. Okay, so I'm just doing that. Now when I go to other strings, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that contact point and I'm actually going to push it forward towards the neck of the guitar in sort of a diagonal movement. So let's say I'm just doing a basic warm-up here. Go to the next string. Do you see that shift there? What I'm doing is I'm taking that pad part, that part that I've rested on, and I'm shifting it forward. Now what that's going to do is it's going to help in a couple of issues. One of the issues is when I'm moving up, I'm literally sitting on the strings behind that aren't being played. So if you've ever tried to do a solo and you've got like open strings ringing out like crazy, that's not a good thing. But when you use this sort of method, you're actually sitting on the strings that aren't being played. So I can go all the way up, right up to the high E string here, and literally all these guys are dead. Okay, I'll put some volume in, you can hear it that way. Okay, no open strings noise whatsoever because I'm sitting on those strings. So it's very efficient in a way that you're not having to compensate for open string noise or, you know, play one string in a particular different way. Now the other cool thing about this, and I'm going to leave you with this, is when I'm picking a string, I'm not picking this string, this low E string, any differently than I'm picking the high E string. My pick, if I can just show you here, stays at the same angle all the way across. Now, have you ever played stuff and you have a cool riff that's on the low strings or even a cool riff that's on the high strings? You try to play it somewhere, you know, in the middle or somewhere else other than where you originally played it, and you can't do it. And it's not because you can't do it with your fret hand. The fret hand's fine, but what usually winds up happening is it's because the pick is contorted in particular angles depending on your approach to the strings. So, you know, you may be really, really awesome, and you probably are really awesome doing something up here, and then you try to do it down low. Well, you know, your pick's at such a weird angle that it just doesn't come out, and you might not be doing a thing wrong with the left hand, but it's just because there's some inconsistencies in the way that you're picking. How you approach it on that string and how you approach it on another string are going to be two completely different ways. Well, this solves that because I'm not going to pick that string any differently than I'm picking this string. My hand, my pick, like my wrist and my fingers don't really know any difference. The only thing that's really controlling it is my arm. Okay, so you know, if I'm up here, that's fine. My wrist really doesn't know any different. And if I go, this hand doesn't know any different. All it's doing is just going down and up. It's really stupid that way. It's just down, 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 down. So it's just a matter of controlling that hand by using your arm. So if you're one of those guys that just kind of reef their forearm right on the guitar there, this is going to feel weird because what you need to do is share the weight between the forearm and the wrist, sort of like a 50-50 balance, if you will, between those two parts, because you need to sort of lighten up on that forearm so that it doesn't get stuck right there. Because if you try this approach and you put all the weight on the forearm, you're only going to go as far as your skin can stretch, and then, you know, all of a sudden you got to unstick the arm and then push it forward. So share the weight between the wrist and the arm, and then you'll find yourself being able to float a little bit there. So that's how I approach my picking. Hopefully you can glean some benefit from it. As always, give me a shout and let me know what you think. Thanks.